Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. Today we have Blake Templeton, who is the CEO and founder of Boron Capital. Hello, Blake. How are you today?
Hey, so good, Mark.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Unfortunately, we've had to rearrange it a few times, which was all my fault, but I'm glad we've got this today, and we're going to talk a lot about Boron Capital and about new opportunities which are coming up in real estate and crypto. So we'll go into that in due course. Firstly, I ask all of my guests, it's because the podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. The first question is always, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Well, I would focus on, first of all, if I'd break that down, like what's the reason for business? And the reason one goes into business is like to create massive value, and then you create massive profit because of that. So business mindset would be beginning with the end in mind, to have this certainty, this massive conviction that I will make massive profit no matter the circumstances, because I will always give massive value. And matter of fact, that's why I'm so passionate about, our hedge fund and cryptocurrency, because that's what we have built that proprietary system to do, is provide massive value in that digital space.
I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the things that comes up a lot with that question is adding value or massive value, because that is in essence consumers, whether they are companies or whether they're individuals as consumers, are looking to get value from business to whatever product or service they provide. So that's a great answer. Thank you. Let's talk about your first area that we talk about, which is upbringing. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your upbringing and your experience through school and education?
Yeah, so it's probably one of my favorite parts of the story is I was a college dropout without a penny to my name. And I knew I wanted to own my own business some way, somehow. But I didn't know that you couldn't defer student loans anymore. So I had to humbly move back in with mommy and daddy, back in 2006. And the big picture is I ended up just burning the bridge, behind me, and realized that I had to go pioneer and make whatever I was going to do work. And so, long story short, my parents had got a letter in the mail to go to a real estate conference. And I went to this conference and I didn't know anything, Mark, about real estate.
Right.
I mean, you talk about, what you do with real estate. And I didn't know nothing except I realized as the guy was presenting, I knew numbers like optics and metrics. I could do the formula. So I started knocking on foreclosures and helping people get out of foreclosure, stop their foreclosure, discount their mortgage. And then I was wholesaling those deals out and ended up making six figures the first year and doubled it the next year, and realized, man, I'm really good at the numbers part. And then we quickly went into commercial real estate, realizing obviously, it's just a bigger project with maybe larger problems, but this is the same mental frameworks. So started in 06, did 300 plus transactions to 2012, went into commercial real estate, corporate housing, built corporate housing development, fully furnished, all bills paid, kind of like a hotel, but for the oil industry. Right. Then went into apartments all across the United States. And then realized, we wanted to scale. So the bigger part was like scaling in the real estate world. So we ended up building a hedge fund and self-storage and mobile home parks, which I'm sure we might get into a little bit. And then realized, the digital world is changing so much. COVID changed everything and everything's going digital. So we built a hedge fund and cryptocurrency. And I tell you, everything is moving digital. The proprietary system we built allows you to scale and build massive profit and what we'd call the largest, wealth transfer ever. So, but the part about dropping out of college without putting my name, most people have that mental framework. You had to have the college degree, then you had to have the doctorate, then you had to have all these, letters behind your name. So maybe I had some inspiration to some people who realize that you just got to have conviction, drive, pursuit, and you just got to be able to, maybe it's that business mindset you're talking about that really is what it means.
Where do we start, Blake? You've basically summarized your whole life. So I want to break some of that down so we can just find a little bit more about this. So we'll come on to your Boron Capital, about the real estate investment and sort of talk about the wholesaling. We'll talk about that all in one. We'll get to digital and to crypto in a minute. But just I want to sort of just talk about something. And you said you're a college dropout and that should inspire people. And absolutely. I get people, listeners as well as guests, who have not had the natural course of going through what most people considered the education was. But the point I wanted to say is, so you started your education in real estate, in property, right? So you did go and get educated. It wasn't in humanities or science or technology.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You decided that you needed that real estate. And one of the things I talk about on my podcast is that especially for real estate, for property stuff, it's really important to get educated on one area and then you can build the areas after that.
Yeah, it's so important. It's a great paradigm shift. Most people become that jack of all trades and a master of none. And so they become what I call the natural condition of man, where they fall asleep and become a machine and they just go through life with no actual expertise. So, I mean, yeah, I spent or invested over $1 million in specific education from people who I believe were the best in their field of real estate or cryptocurrency. And you have to pay for speed. I mean, you have one life, Mark, single life, and you only really have a specific part of that life that is actually the one, that you can actually thrive. And so pay for speed is so much better than the way of hard knocks. Everyone goes through that to some degree, but yes, paying for speed, that's the way you get the business mindset, because you're learning from everyone else's failures, so you don't have to make them. Absolutely.
And 0708, where we had credit crunch, where we had all the problems in property, especially, was that actually, because I genuinely believe that recessions and corrections are times to buy rather than not.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you were quite early on in your sort of development in real estate and property. What was 0708 like for you?
Yeah, it was the perfect storm because we were in the helping people out of foreclosure. So it was the absolute perfect storm. That was when foreclosures were at their highest, and we had a specific niche strategy that helped the market. Going back to that business value, we had a product or a service rather that did exactly what the market needed. And so, it was a win-win.
How many deals did you do in your first couple of years?
From 06 to 2012, 300 plus.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
300 plus transactions.
And so you decided to set up Boron Capital. So this was 16 years ago. And I love the story about boron because I never knew what boron was. So I was looking it up. It says it's a rare element that's stronger than diamond. So how did the name come about?
So interesting. Back in that time, I thought more small and my wife thought way big. And so I had this mom and pop type name, and she's like, no, it's got to be something massive and grandiose. And so essentially the element and the periodic table boron in its perfect form, it actually can cut a diamond. Obviously, we know diamonds can cut anything. We use diamond blades as saws. Yep. And so, boron. So the idea is that your investments needed to be in its perfect form and you could weather any storm in that season.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I think it's such a great name. There's there are some good ones that, especially real estate and property, people come up with good names, but I think that's probably the best one I've heard so far. So we'll come on to crypto in a minute. I just want to go in a little bit into this. So for your real estate business, you say you build investment opportunities for your clients. How do you do that within real estate now?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Yeah, the main way we do that now is through a hedge fund in self-storage and mobile home parks. So when we were transitioning, we sold all of our apartment complexes and we're realizing to scale, to help more clients, to be able to bring in more money, we had to be in investments that always flourished. And apartments are a very interesting thing. One, they get saturated really easy, and then the prices go astronomical, which you lose the opportunity to make return. But every 15 years, you have to remodel everything. And so we realized that we did a study, and from 1993 to 2022, in that 19-year period, self-storage and mobile home parks were absolutely the definitive leaders from appreciation and massive growth. Literally like 3 times anything else, from industrial to apartments to hotels to commercial to retail. And so we realized that that's where we wanted to scale. So we built a hedge fund and partnered with the best operators in the United States and brought them in. So they acquire the properties and we service the clients to have them in the best proprietary system of.
So what are you property manager? Are you managing the tenants?
It's a hedge fund.
Okay.
And so we service clients to put them into the fund,
right?
Which the fund would have, a self-store 900 unit self-storage in maybe next to Washington, D.C., and then a mobile home community in Colorado. And so each fund typically has 10 plus or minus properties. And these are 10 million to say $30 million properties. So they're large properties.
Yeah.
And every investor, when they come in, we do it completely different than everyone else. So most people would sell the property. So it took forever to find it, and you find the diamond, and then 3 to 5 years later, you sell it. So we don't ever sell the properties, but we refinance them, pay all the investors' principal back,
right?
Allow them to stay in the deal.
Yeah.
Now they have no principal in it, so there's no risk.
Right.
And then they're able to have a legacy property that pays them every single month.
And how many funds do you have? And how many are within each fund? How many investors within each fund?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our operators have a total of 8 funds. This is our first fund in self-storage mobile home parks. In this fund, we have $80 million in AUM, $80 million in AUM with 3 properties. This is a new fund. It'll have 7 to 8 additional properties. And the beautiful thing is how that's set up is when investors come in, you become a proportional owner of even the properties that are already in the fund.
Right.
Because they're becoming a proportional owner of the future properties. So it's a beautiful, beautiful picture where you become a proportional owner of, let's say 10 different properties.
Yeah.
And these are institutional grade. These are, this is a $300 million fund when it's finished. And it's something that our goal is to bring to the regular Joe who's accredited something that you could only have as an institutional investor.
Yeah.
And so it provides that institutional return to the masses.
And is the number of investors you've got in each fund, is that based on how much per person has put in? Is there, so there's a maximum value of the value of the property that you're investing, the properties that you're investing in. So is the number of investors within each fund dependent on how much they've put in, or is it per a certain number you're looking for?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll answer that multiple different ways, but we have a minimum of a $250,000 investment. And on, let's say, a $10 million property, we do a 50-50 loan to value. So 50% is bank money and 50% is investor money. So we would have the ability to raise from enough investors to, create that, again, that in that example, that $5 million down payment for the acquisition of that property.
It's really fascinating. I think it's a really interesting business model that you've created there. Something that's very dear to my heart is wholesaling, is property sourcing, what we call it in the UK. So what was your experience of doing that before you got into the fund? How many deals did you do? Who did you service? What sort of clients did you work with?
Yeah, so that was 06 to 2012, and of that 300 plus, we probably had over 100 of those were wholesales, and in that it's a beautiful niche. That's what you have to niche down, and it's a beautiful niche, especially if you've got very little funds to work with, because if you're savvy and you actually have these strategies, you can actually create a full-time living, just by doing a deal a month. What we realized was that we wanted to create the asset. We wanted to create the net worth. And, I was clearing 6 figures, even after the first year, but then you slowly realize that you got to go close another one to bring in that money again. And so that's where we kind of transition and phase into larger cash flowing properties so that we could, 1, take the cash flow, and then 2, the equity. And then, the picture got even bigger of other individuals saying, hey, can you help me make some cash flow and some equity? And obviously there goes the big picture of the empire to help a lot of people.
And who is we? You've said a couple of times about Boron Capital being we. Who would you describe as we?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm the owner of Boron Capital, but I have many people on our team that I've poured into and discipled and casted vision for. So we run everything as a family, and we really drive home the point of our mission and our vision of, we want to change the world, whatever that looks like. And however we have the opportunity, we want to be a beacon of hope and actually bring light to a dark world in as many avenues as we possibly can.
Thank you. We're going to get onto crypto. I've got one last question about real estate. So obviously with wholesaling and with this investment fund, the two aspects which are the most important, which I do in my property sourcing, is you have two parts. You have the properties, so you've got to have the properties in your portfolio or available to be able to buy. So it might be complexes, it might be in the UK, it might be apartment blocks or whatever. But the other side is the investor side, and you've got to find the investors. So just talk to that piece of how you balance between finding the right properties, so it could be complexes or whatever, versus having to find the right investor type person as well.
Yeah, I think that was the paradigm shift that I made, was to grow from the hedge fund model. You can't do everything. So like at the mom and pop restaurant, for example, maybe the cook is also sitting people at the table while something's in the oven, and the waitress is actually the person at the front sitting people or cleaning tables, being the busboy, wearing multiple different hats. And that's really how we were in wholesales, and even in all the real estate that we owned up until 2017 or something. Everything was done in-house. So we managed everything in-house. The paradox is to grow, you have to actually then go find skilled individuals for those other items. So to answer your question, on the hedge fund model for real estate, we actually then zeroed in and found operators. So instead of me being the operator, the manager, the developer, the financer, instead of me doing everything, we went and found the best operators who have the best record of the properties they're buying, then allow them to have the pulse on the market, and then we lend to our piece of the pie. So for those who are doing investments to looking to scale, you just got to find out what you're best at or what you enjoy most, and relinquish some of that control and partner with other people, because one, you can grow so much faster, but a lot of times if you then focus on the niche or the strategy or the piece of the pie of the business or the hedge fund in this case, you can scale so much faster. And that's what we ended up doing, was we ended up having operators that they actually maybe they have a harder time raising the capital, they have a hard time managing the clients, or they have a harder time on the admin or the higher level management, but they're amazing. They're the best in the United States at sourcing the large properties and the negotiation and the offers and the analysis of those offers and so forth. So that's what we did, was partner.
Find the specialists. So absolutely. So when you're scaling a business, and for my listeners here, we've heard it a few times or many times on this podcast about when you're scaling, there's a difference between the startup phase where everyone sort of pitches in and everyone joins in to make it work, to when you're looking to scale, you have to find specialists and people that do specific roles like HR, like finance, like accounting, like investors, and you have specialists doing that. So absolutely, that sort of systemization and process is so important for scaling the business. So thank you for sharing that. Well, let's go on to your current exciting development within crypto. So I've said this before, crypto's not my necessarily my area of specialism at all, but I'm definitely looking to sort of find out some more information. I'm sure a lot of people on my podcast also is thinking about investing in crypto and thinking about the different options there. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do and who you help?
Yeah. First of all, I'd just say that every single person in the world will be in cryptocurrency to some degree, whether they want to or not. Just like when the very first 1.0 digital world came in with, let's just say, debit cards and credit cards, which was not that long ago. Everyone alive right now, it was in your time frame. It was in your lifetime. And when it happened, no one knew what to do with it. And how does this piece of plastic, I touch it here, or I slide it here, how does that actually happen? And how does my money go from one place to another? And how does someone not steal it? But everyone did it, and everyone does it. And it's actually the method of everyone knows as today. Well, essentially, this is for everyone, because the credit card world, the debit card world, that's the dinosaur. Everything's changing. Just like the post office was the dinosaur to the email, just like going to the store was a dinosaur to Amazon. Like it or not, it's where everything's going. So the people we help are accredited investors who are wanting to actually build wealth. And we would call this the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. It's the transition of everything to a digital format. So I think the best way to explain it is everyone has a phone, and almost everyone has a smartphone, at least in the civilized world of, first world or second world living. And a smartphone has, if it's Android or iPhone, has a app store. And on that app store, we might call it a platform.
Yeah.
Well, Bitcoin would be like the phone, because the phone is really software that does things, and Bitcoin is software. And so the iPhone has that platform called the App Store. Well, Bitcoin has a platform called the blockchain, and iPhone has that platform called the App Store that has apps, businesses that make things easy for us. And Bitcoin, that software, has a platform called the blockchain that has apps with businesses. So most people think of, Bitcoin as, currency, and it is. But it's really important to know that on the blockchain is where all the value is, and what the shift is, and the utility of the blockchain. And you don't have to understand the blockchain to use it, just like you didn't have to understand the credit card to use it. But it'll actually change voting. All voting will be done, eventually on the blockchain.
Can I just interrupt you? Sorry to cut across you, but so I'm not necessarily the biggest advocate for Bitcoin. People know that on my podcast, but I'm more of an advocate of blockchain as a technology impacting, as you say, voting, transactions, for sharing contracts with people. And I actually think blockchain is as a platform or as a technology is actually going to have a greater impact than potentially even the currencies that are generally what most people think of for the technology.
Yeah, it's very possible. And I tell you what, before I forget, because we could talk about this for a week.
Please
straight,
tell me about your course. Why don't you tell everyone about your course that you're offering?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most valuable pieces we've created. It's a 2-hour, starting out the very basics of, but it's a masterclass, and it explains to you exactly what's happening right now in the world, and how the digital world is turning over. And most importantly, if you want to take ownership of your wealth and your investments, how you can actually make money in cryptocurrency by actually investing into cryptocurrency. Again, cryptocurrency, you can remove the word currency and just understand that it's a software in the digital world And it actually will change how we do everything from, again, from voting to real estate with escrow and title and securities with derivatives and equity and crowdfunding. And you talked about like kind of smart contract type stuff with ownership or NFTs or healthcare. And so big picture is you just have to learn. You have to know what's happening in it. And what I want to do is I just want to give this to you guys. It's just a gift that I think will bless you tremendously. The way you'll get it, it's quite simple. You just pull out your cell phone, and I'm going to have you just text me, and you're going to text the word invest to the phone number 877-771-0615. So 877-771-0615. And that will then begin the conversation, and we'll send the masterclass to you. So sorry to interrupt. We can continue, but I want
I just want to emphasize that. No, thank you very much. I just want to emphasize to anyone that is looking to invest in crypto or learn more about cryptocurrency, this is the course that you need to be on, a 2-hour webinar with Blake and his team talking about cryptocurrency. So please, on that number, do register, do log on, and please do go on his course. So thank you very much for that offer. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure lots of my listeners will appreciate that as well. When will I be able to buy a car with Bitcoin?
You already can. Yeah, you absolutely already can. Now, any car, well, that's different. But,
I think it's Tesla. You can buy Teslas, can't you? On Bitcoin?
Yeah, but and let's just process any car for a second. So today, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, they all have custom digital wallets where you can hold Bitcoin.
Right.
And there's what's called the high rail system. And what that does is when you go to buy that car, you literally could go to the merchant counter and you literally could slide this specific card, and it converts the Bitcoin into your currency that you live in. And literally you could buy with cryptocurrency just like that.
So it's phenomenal. It's amazing.
Today, right now.
One of the questions that comes up with even older guys than me, I'm not necessarily that old, but it's that a lot of people, when you gave the example of the debit card that you swipe or touch, mm-hmm. Whenever these new technologies come along, everyone worries about security. That's generally where people think the biggest exposure is. So how would you sort of approach if someone was talking to you, asking you questions about security?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to that point, it's an important question. It's an important thing to understand, because it's
probably the biggest hurdle, isn't it? Like let's be honest. It probably, like, lack of knowledge, yes, but that will come in time. But that's a mindset thing. But it's
definitely a mindset thing. So let me explain what's happened in cryptocurrency and why I would say that I would push the thesis that it's safer than your credit card. It's safer than your debit card. So it has what's called a 2-factor authentication. So you've probably seen this in your email, where, if you're going to log on your email on a different computer, they want to text you and they want to, get a password from another source. It has face recognition. So you literally on your cryptocurrency wallet, there's face recognition where it's, it would have to be you. Someone can't just physically take it. Your password changes every 90 days. So someone can't actually take it, hold it, and stay with it long term. There are, if you are going to do cryptocurrency on an exchange, there's different emails for every exchange. So you couldn't keep using the same one. So there's so many different things, like a permanent use of a VPN. So like a taking you off of your current desktop location and putting you in a VPN in a different location. It's, the institutional verification is happening right now where the I's are getting dotted and T's are getting crossed as far as regulations. And so there's so many different things right now that it takes so much to actually get into it yourself. Every single new person who gets into it, you're like, man, I felt like I was going through TSA, like having to get the pat down just to go through to get on the airplane. Like they actually want to identify you, and you have to have what's it called, a KYC, and know your customer. You have to have an identity that's already built in, like a background identity. And so what that changes is the difference between that and a government currency, like a US dollar, for example. Mm. Well, anyone can have the US dollar. You can steal the US dollar. There's, you leave the money out and it's gone. You drop your wallet, it's gone. As you know, in real estate, when we're closing a transaction, the title company is like, hey, if you get an email and it says to wire the money to a different email address or a different, don't do it. Don't wire the money to a different place. Call me first, because they're finding out how to use currency, the U.S. currency or the euro or whatever it is, to actually to use that for fraud. So, yeah, the security is tightened up so much, and it's what would have to happen in this time in day and age, and it's definitely helping tremendously.
Do you think the US government will be able to, I think they do want to, but will they be able to regulate cryptocurrency in the way that they've been able to regulate the dollar?
It's a great question. And I'd like to separate regulation and control. So my dentist can regulate my cleaning, but he can't control me to come in.
Right.
So if I'm going to come in, he's going to regulate how the assistant cleans my teeth. So they won't be able to control the currency. They won't be able to close it, stop it. They won't be able to remove it from your hands. They won't be able to control how you spend it. So they won't have control. And
will they be able to tax it?
So right now it's looked at as a commodity versus a security, or as far as a Bitcoin at least. And so they would just be able to tax it like a commodity, like no favoritism. It is just like real estate, and we can only tax it like real estate. We can't have a manipulative control of changing and you get taxed more or less. However, the real question is, well, then how are they going to have control? Well, they're creating their own digital currency,
yes,
just like every other currency is, every other government. And the governments are realizing, wait a minute, we print money like it's going out of style because we don't have a business. We don't have a business mindset, that actually creates profit as a country. So we got to go create money out of thin air. And then that raises inflation.
Yeah.
So let's go create our own digital currency. And then we can add zeros all we want. So the problem with that is the people who buy into that transition to take upon the government's currency, whatever country you live in, you got the noose around your neck and you're done, because what their desire is in the smart wallet, in the crypto wallet of that currency's government dollar, they won't have the crypto wallet that you will have your Bitcoin or your Ethereum in. Right. They'll have their own, and they'll have your healthcare in there.
Yeah.
They'll have your ethnicity. They'll have your religion. They'll have everything. And so if they want to actually bend the scale, they can tax you. So in the US, the IRS and wherever other government agencies in other countries for taxing, those will be eliminated. You'll be taxed through the government's wallet. And so you'll truly become a slave to the government. And that's how they'll have control. So they might tax way more because of something you did or said or your ethnicity. But Bob over here, because of his scenario, they throw some extra money into his wallet to make it equal.
Right.
And so you could see where that's going, just where all the news is going. And so that's the benefit of cryptocurrency, is it's sovereign and no one owns it. No one has control over it. And so that's everyone's ability. Every single person, like it or not, like pieces of it or not, like ideas of it or not, you've got to get outside of anyone controlling you, and you've got to take control of your own money.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem that I see with this situation is that you'll get banks and you'll get institutional investors that will actually go with the government government wallet of crypto, their own system. And that's when you'll sort of see that people will be influenced if banks are doing it, if institutional investors are using the government blockchain, then you'll find people will invest in that. So I agree with your theory that as long as you keep control of your wallet and you don't necessarily get sucked into the government's process, but you're going to get those institutional investors that are going to go, actually, we'll actually stump for the government's currency.
So here's the crazy part. There's a company called NYDIG, and they actually are a custodian for if Bob wants to go hold Bitcoin as an institutional level. May not Bob, but it's a family office or institution.
Yeah.
Then they go through NYDIG. NYDIG actually is working with 300 different banks, national banks, international banks. And those banks are now able to sell cryptocurrency to you at the bank level. So, and they're doing that at certain locations, but like a Wells Fargo or a Chase, or they can actually, so in your savings account, their whole goal, it's just like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, because the banks would end up being obsolete long term. Because if everyone was in the crypto wallet, they wouldn't need a local bank. But if the bank sells the cryptocurrency, there's this idea that they could actually continue this relationship, and everyone stays in this thing together. So if you can't beat them, join them.
Absolutely.
And so the banks are actually, in that process of selling the cryptocurrency themselves, just like an exchange, which is a very interesting shift. And everyone's playing chess pieces.
Yeah.
You're seeing just a couple news pieces for a second. I think it's important just to realize that there's so much happening right now. And you and I, we have to just see it and be like, interesting. Like, for instance, the Canadian Prime Minister candidate said, Canada should be the Bitcoin capital of the world, and the Canadians should have the freedom to use other monies like cryptocurrency. The Ukrainian president just signed and approved a bill to legalize Bitcoin as legal tender. The Malaysian government just proposed adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. The Vietnam just ordered their central bank to create legal framework for Bitcoin and crypto to be legal tender. There's a Mexican senator that just vowed that Mexico needs Bitcoin to be legal tender. A CEO in Southeast Asia's largest bank just said Bitcoin and crypto should be alternative to gold in South Asia. So this is just in the last few weeks, and it's changing drastically. So you and I just want to think, I guess that's a good pitch again back to the masterclass, guys. Go to the masterclass. Whether you do it or not, it's kind of irrelevant at the moment. You just can't have your head in the sand. Like, this is the largest change of anything. When matter of fact, Biden, in the US, he just signed an executive order, told every single department in our US government, go spend the next 3 months and figure out how we're going to, join them, how we're going to actually be pro crypto. Yeah. And, just 6 months ago, they were more negative against it. So it's an interesting time. And it's just a time where you and I have to say, wait, if this is the largest wealth transfer in the world history, whether I understand it or not, maybe I should spend a little bit more time getting to understand it.
Absolutely. So what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years for you, Blake?
It's a great question. And I would say it's very clear that as far as Boron Capital, the cryptocurrency hedge fund will be our greatest focus, for the fact that, one, we have so many people who are coming to that point of realizing I got to have allocation to crypto. I have to have it. And then the realization that we want to actually provide and be that expert in the community that says, this is how you do it. Because it's still in that phase of like, but there's so much camouflage noise. How do you do it? So next 2 to 5 years is definitely a very strong focus on helping as many people put allocation in their crypto investment, or in their investment portfolio, into crypto as possible.
And what is that optimum amount, would you say?
As far as our goal, or as far as
you'd advise investors? So if they're
perfect, yeah.
What out of their 100% allocation of different investment vehicles, property, of currency, commodities, what would you say is the right point for crypto at the moment?
Yeah. So though I can't advise, because everyone has different scenarios.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So here's some ideas. I would say, Mark Cuban, who back 2 or 3 years ago, so he's the owner of the Mavericks and a billionaire in multiple different arenas. He's a few years ago, he said it's a scam, it's volatile, it's crazy. Now he says cryptocurrency is shifting the world. It will be the world's future. He's putting 75% of every new dollar he makes into crypto. Wow. Ray Dalio, who in 2017, Ray Dalio has Bridgewaters, who's the largest hedge fund in the world. 2017, he said it's too volatile. It's not worth investing into. 2021, he said, now again, pre-framing, 40% of his hedge fund, which is the largest in the world, 40% was bonds. In 2021, he said, I'd rather hold Bitcoin than bonds.
Wow.
So the idea is you could start with a minimum, as far as 5%, dip your toes in the water. Yeah. Wherever your investment is, so there will be your heart also. So you got to put something in the game so that you can at least get excited about the game of understanding it. For us personally, the majority of our my personal and Boron Capital's monies would be in crypto, because we believe in it that much. Right. So it's different for every person, but I would say everyone, if you don't buy into cryptocurrency, you don't buy into your future. Yeah. So I would say you got to put something.
Well, you've 5%. Mark Cuban and Ray Dalio, who are like Ray Dalio, I think is amazing. I think his book was inspiring 3 or 4 years ago. So for me, that's a big tick, having Ray Dalio saying that crypto's important and should be invested in. So yeah, absolutely. Right. I want to come to the end. I want to be respectful of your time. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quickfire questions. They don't need a quickfire answer. The first question is, what was the best decision that you've made?
The best decision that I've made, I would say, and this is not an investment answer, but it would be surrendering my pride and my arrogancy and my earthly ways that I know everything, surrendering that to God. I realized that I didn't know everything and that I had to actually have a leader. And so I found that to be Jesus. And that was the absolute best solution for my entire life.
Excellent. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I would say it was by Tony Robbins. We were at a one-on-one conversation, and he said, it was maybe in the same season, and he said, Blake, you're significant driven and you're certainty driven. And so your significance and your certainty driven, it's going to, where focus goes, your emotions flow. So your significance and certainty is going to lead you down a path that's not good in the end. But you need to be growth driven, and then have a heart to contribute to others. So if these two things are your biggest factors, it'll change your entire life. And when he said it, it was like this, brrr, like so lame. Why? I'm already doing that, but clearly I wasn't. And when I made that shift, it was like, because I quit focusing on I had to be right. I quit focusing on being certain in my own self, and I focused on giving to others and then growing in my own personal development. And yeah, that was a game changer for me.
Great stuff. Who's helped you most in your career?
It's hard to say for one single mentor. One is Keith Cunningham. Keith Cunningham in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series.
Yeah.
He's actually the rich dad and the real person in the story,
right?
From Robert Kiyosaki's book. And so Keith Cunningham, I have spent a solid year in a board of directors position where I would be on the board of 15 other companies, and they're on my board. And then Keith Cunningham sits on everyone's board, and he goes through all your numbers and the language he would speak about optics and metrics and how numbers tell a story and how you have to know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers in business, you don't know the target in which you're going for. And you have to know the best case scenario and the worst case scenario and find out, can you live with the worst case scenario? And so it's, those little bitty bite-sized bullet points that turn the tide in any investor or anyone's business.
Great stuff. Do you have any regrets?
Absolutely. One that, everything's hindsight, right? It's like your Monday morning quarterback. But if one I could say would be like not being in crypto earlier, I didn't spend the time. I didn't actually go deeper into it. So, Bitcoin started at 1 penny and it's grown 20 million%.
Wow.
And so people say, it's volatile. I'm like, where were you the last decade? It's been going, up and to the right for the last decade, on average 200% growth. But everyone looks at the hour by hour, like, oh my gosh, it just dropped 5%. I'm like, did you not see it went up 30% last month? Right. So, so the big picture is just not spending the time and educating myself earlier.
Great stuff. What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of my relationship with my wife. She's in the business. We work together, and everyone, said, one, you can't do it. You're going to get divorced. No one can work with their spouse. And, even when we got married, is the idea of, ball and chain mentality. And, now you're going to turn passive and soft and, you have to please her just to survive. And we have built this like beautiful camaraderie of iron sharpening iron and learning to give to each other and, wanting to give to each other how we would want to be given to us and having that trust that it'll come back and it's not eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. And man, that's been a beautiful thing because that's what you'd want as a best friend, as a spouse. And so that's what I'm most proud of for sure.
Great stuff. What does legacy mean to you?
Man, I love the word legacy. I think legacy is, again, beginning with the end in mind. And most people live from what I call, again, that natural condition of man. So it's you fall asleep and become a machine. You live day to day. You don't even think about the future because you're so stuck in the present. And I would say you have to actually figure out what you want for the future and then figure out where you're at and then find the gap. And then building, like we're working on the gap, creates a legacy of something at least closer to what you wanted. And legacy would be something sustainably, perpetually growing for the future, something that you pass on to generations, where people know your name, 30 years after you die, where like you have a you make a shift, a trajectory shift in the atmosphere where you actually held a place in people's minds. Like legacy would almost be real estate in people's minds of a memory. Like he holds weight in this world.
Great stuff. And lastly, where can people find you, and maybe do a quick plug for the webinars again?
Yeah, I would say the absolute best way to get a hold of us, to learn more about cryptocurrency, to venture into that space, to ask questions, would be to start with just building that relationship. And that's just, again, getting the masterclass. So you can ask questions through that text. So you're going to, again, pull out your cell phone. You're going to text the word invest. So you're going to send me a direct text message. And this number, I can't actually take phone calls. It's literally just a customer service, white glove opportunity for you. So you're going to text the word invest, and then the number 877-771-0615. And we'd love to build a relationship with you, whether you're a great fit for the hedge fund as an accredited investor or not. We'd love to pour in and see what we can do to help you in your investment opportunities.
And so that's obviously US based text number, but I could text that from the UK and it will cost me 20p or 30p or something like that. But you could do it from overseas as well, can't you?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And for those of you who want to, start with just information outside of that and maybe come through an email or something, let me just give you our website. So our website is boroncap.com. So it's BORONCAP.com. So boroncap.com. So that's another opportunity to get a hold of us and to request a meeting and so forth.
Right, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Blake. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I've learned stuff about crypto that I didn't know. So I just have to sort of say, if anyone's interested, please do log on and join that webinar where you can learn so much more about crypto. Thank you, Blake. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, Mark, my enjoyment. Look forward to doing it again soon.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.